Hello boys and girls, welcome to another episode number 10 of one-on-one interviews. Today we are in Fuenlabrada, a little bit cold and windy outside, but it's still okay inside to enjoy this episode. And I have to say, when we were about 2 months into filming one-on-one interviews, I received a text message on Instagram from a young Spanish strength and conditioning coach who said that he likes the episodes, that it's a really nice way to learn something new. And he wrote in the end, I have 2 names that you have to put on your list for future interviews. And one of the names he wrote was the name of this guy, Ruben, who is currently working as a strength and conditioning coach of Fuenlabrada basketball. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Luca. I appreciate you having me here, and I'm here for you for whatever you need.
Perfect. I'm really looking forward to dive into the questions. I'm really happy to be here because Fuenlabrada, for me as a Croatian guy, is a really nice club with a great history of Croatian players. Yes. Inside the arena there are 6 jerseys on the wall, and 2 of them belong to Croatian guys, Marko Popovic and ex-coach who I worked with, Velimir Perasovic. So it's really an honor to be here, and it's really a pleasure to sit with you. Back then, when I received this text message from the guy, I knew of your name because I know more or less all the Spanish strength and conditioning coaches, but I didn't know you because I received the message, I think it was October, more or less, and then we still haven't played against each other, and this is your first year in Fuenlabrada. Yes. So back then we started to talk, we stayed in contact, and I'm really looking forward, as I said, to talk with you about our field, about your journey to professional level. And I think we have some great topics in the main part. We're going to talk about youth players development, we're going to talk about female and male basketball, load control, something that is really hot topic nowadays. So let's get to it. Okay, please tell us first a little bit more about your background, because I like to start this way, because Strength and Conditioning Society doesn't share a lot about information about someone's background, and I really think it's important for young guys, young strength and conditioning coaches, to learn a little bit from you, from your experiences.
So I was my life has been based on sports and experience in sports always since I can remember. My grandfather was a hockey coach, so since I was little I had all the hockey material around the house, but he also put emphasis on some other sports. He also made me play basketball. I played soccer or football with him. Played a lot of sports with him, and he already got me into sports, and sports has been my life since I've been a little kid. So it was pretty clear to me that I wanted to study what I studied, and it was especially basketball has been my wife is gonna get mad, but the love of my life, and I'm very happy that I can still work in it, and that I can develop myself into now a strength and conditioning coach. Before I used to play. I played lower divisions than ACB, but I was getting good money for playing. And while I played, I started coaching athletes and doing both things at the same time until I stopped playing, and I took training athletes and teams as a pro thing. So basically, is that my journey has been always related to basketball and sports in general. And like I said, it's a pleasure I feel it's a privilege to be working on what I like and what I feel that is the best fit for me.
As a practitioner, in which fields do you have experience beside basketball?
I've trained boxing athletes. I've trained I don't know if it's too known around Europe, but it's paddle. It's a variation of tennis in a smaller court. It's becoming more popular now, but it's a very fun sport to watch, and it has some points that are common to our sport, right? Because it's accelerations, decelerations, a lot of movements that are similar. Of course, displayed into a smaller court, but you have some similarities. I have pretty good athletes in that sport. I've had also a couple soccer players, and I've had motorbike people also. So I've had a
mix of everything.
Yeah, a mix of everything. Yeah, and yeah, basically those sports are the main. And tennis, I had one tennis player. Yeah.
What is the greatest value from working with so many different sports and different athletes?
Well, I think that when you work as a strength and conditioning coach, the most I guess and you're a plural sports and conditioning coach that works in many sports. Your biomechanical knowledge has to be on point. You know what I mean? Because this is going to allow you to not only train your athletes, but analyze different sports and analyze what do you need to work on with those athletes based on how they move, right? So I think that biomechanical knowledge and the analysis of the athlete is one thing that comes from working into different sports. That's mainly what I think that I get out of that, and also at times where you feel stress on one, like let's say that like us this year, situation has been rough sometimes, and it's been being under pressure and stuff. You have time to work on with some other athletes that'll take you away a little bit from it, and this is something that comes with it. I mean, you don't learn from it, but it's some added value to training people from different sports at the same time.
Brilliant, I like it. To switch gears a little bit, let's talk about the education. Especially, I'm interested. We spoke in so many interviews about the formal education, and as I say, everyone who has a formal education at the university will say that it's a basis to everything, it's very important, and so on. So let's talk immediately about the informal education. What is your point of view when it comes to informal education, and what are your favorite ways to do it?
Like you said, college is the main thing. That's like something that you have to do to be able to work on this. But I've always been oriented to education that comes from the States. I like from America. I like a lot of the things they do over there, and I look forward to. I'm always looking to add some. It's not some degrees, some maybe some certifications that come from there. I'm actually a CSCS from the NSCA, and I am also a USA weightlifting coach, level 1, and I did both over there in the States. So it's something that I like. I see so many other, you got EXOs, you have the Mike Boyle courses, you have a lot of things that come from there that are not, university based, that I think are very interesting to see and to feel and to go through, and I'm always looking to what comes from there, even though we have some good things going on here, and they get better year by year. But I've been always going back and forth to the States to get to chat with people, talk with people. Not only what you get on the level of certifications is important. I think that talking to people, talking to professionals, that is not certified. You don't have a paper for it, but I think you'll get the most out of talking like we're doing right now with other professionals and good professionals, and that people that actually want to help you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is a brilliant point. I think it's very, very valuable and important for everyone who is listening, especially young guys, because young guys are always trying to find mentors, trying to read papers, and sometimes they forget to talk to their colleagues, or they're intimidated, or they're like, he's I have to compete with someone, they usually don't think that they might grow even more if they connect with their colleagues,
Yep, that's absolutely true, and I think that's a good point right now, because talking to some of my friends that are currently working and that are currently seeking for students to come and help them out, we feel like that students now is seeking, to work and get immediate, money for it or remuneration. I've been studying, I pay for my studies, now it's time to work, I have to get money. And actually, I think that it's very important for them to know that when you go with a professional that is willing to open all his work to you, it's not that you should be getting paid, it's that maybe you should be paying for what he's teaching you. So anytime you have the opportunity to go and learn from a professional that is opening his everyday work to you, that is absolutely gold. And that is something that I think that it has to be thought thoroughly, like by the young people, and try to do it more often. You know what I mean? Like I think that is important. I remember going to the States like 8 years ago and finding one coach that was working at the time with Oklahoma City Thunder. Great coach. His name is Jordan Webb. He's working now in the University of Notre Dame, and I was 3 weeks with him working like hand to hand, working with the affiliated team of the Oklahoma City Thunder. He opened his work to me. He shared a lot of things with me. And I remember at the time this guy was working there and was not only doing the strength and conditioning, but he was doing the laundry of the team. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying this because this is something that it might seem out of. He was doing everything. I mean, he was doing laundry. He was doing a lot of things that weren't into his job probably concept of things. I'm going to work as a strength and conditioning coach, and then you find yourself doing laundry, right? But he did it with no problem, and right now after that he went to the Cleveland Browns. He went to he's had a great strength and conditioning coach career, and now he's working at the University of Notre Dame. So sometimes you have to go through processes to learn and to go wherever you want to go. You know what I mean? And anytime you find a professional that wants to open to you and wants to share things with you, you're finding, grab that and try to learn from that, because you won't find that in school. You won't find that in any certifications. You won't find that anywhere. You know what I mean? But there. So I think it's good to do it whenever you have the chance.
This is a great example of someone who has a great passion, very enthusiastic about what he's doing, and then on the other hand, staying humble and waiting for the best chance to improve little by little and step by step arrive to a destination where he wants to be. And I know if you reach, he worked with affiliated team of Oklahoma, later on university. Those are the levels of high importance for USA sports. So I think
I tell you, he was brilliant. One of the best professionals I've ever seen on his field, because he was not only a strength and conditioning coach. He was, but at the time, 8 years ago, it was the sports science or sports. It wasn't as developed as it is now, right? But he was managing numbers and he was managing loads on the computer, and he was managing. He was showing me, and I was like, "What is this?" And he managed it quick and fast and doing all of those things. And even doing that, he had time to do all the other stuff, like I'm saying, like laundry and all of that stuff. So it was an amazing experience knowing someone like him for me.
Would you mention some other names as coaches that you might follow or you work with that are worth following, especially for the younger guys?
Well, I follow the work of a lot of people right now. Some of the, you got some of the best that I'm reading, and I find myself sometimes reading too much science and not reading enough books, because this is what we have now, right? You have to read science, you have to. But I have some names like Brad Schoenfeld is a good coach that I follow. Matt Rhea from Indiana, he's the coach of the Indiana football team. Team Sucomel. You got good Spanish people working on the field also, like Xavi Schelling or Lorena Torres, or you have Carlos Basalobre, who's doing a great job on the sport from the sports science point of view. I mean, Mike Boyle has great work. Mark Verstegen has great work. I follow a lot of people and I read a lot of people. I like to like the main thing is don't think that reading one thing you're gonna get one point of view and that you're gonna go with it. Read a lot of stuff and base yourself in a lot of things, and you probably have more chances of being right than just going with one opinion only or one read only.
I mean, in the end, we all steal from each other.
Yeah.
Just you have to be smart when you steal something, that you put it exactly where you needed it to be, and if it makes sense that it becomes a part of your system, of your work, then it's valuable, and then you just continue walking your own path. You know, you're not trying to copy someone, but learning from someone, or like if we want to use it in these words, like steals from someone. You have to steal and stay smart with what you stole. You know?
Definitely, and then your experience is going to guide a little bit what you do, right? Because reading, you can read a lot of things, but then those things might not apply at the moment that you are professionally, or what you're doing, you know, the moment that you're living or that you're going through professionally. And so you have to know a lot of things and read a lot of things to be able. It's like like a toolbox, right? You get tools when you need them, and you use them, when you need them. But in order to use them, you need to have them, and you need to keep them in mind every time you're working.
You said that you don't read as many books as you would like to, but I know that for sure you read more than the average strength and conditioning coach. So let's share a little bit with guys your favorite books.
My favorite books, okay.
Doesn't have to be field related. It can be something that is related to some other fields, but it's up to you.
Yeah, that's probably that's one of the things that I would also like to do more, is read things that are not related to my job. But you know what I feel that if I'm reading something that is not related to my job, is like I'm losing time. You know what I mean? So I'm always trying to read something that is related to what I do. So the books that I would tell you right now probably are, Mike Boyle works to me is pretty good. So functional training, like Advances in Functional Training, is a really good book. Especially I would recommend it, like you said, young coaches that are coming up. It's a very good book for young coaches that are coming up, because it's something that is very comprehensive, and that like he says himself, it just makes sense. The progressions that he's offering there, the way that he offers it, the way that he loads athletes, it just has to make sense for him. So if it doesn't make sense, or if it's too complex, he's not using it. So that's why I think it's a really good read for young people. Then Every Day is Game Day from Mark Verstegen is also a great book. I think their job is, their work is kind of related. It's something that you could say the same, but it's not the same. So it's something that there's a really good progressions in those books, really good compartments of work in those books on how you work on, Mark Verstegen's pillar prep, Mike Boyle's dynamic warm up. You can compare them and go through them and see that it all makes sense. You know what I mean? So this is very important. And then there's other books like Greg Cook's Movement book. It's a really good book. For sure, he will be talking a lot, like he talks a lot in the book about the FMS, with all the controversy that brings in our direction of FMS doesn't predict injury, or because science says so. Right now, you got some papers saying that FMS doesn't predict injury, but I think it's a good way of measuring and seeing how your athlete moves and what you can fix from, just write it down, check it a little bit later, and see if he improved on that. So I think I'm not trying to prevent injuries if I use FMS, but I can use it to know my player a little better, right? So, FMS is in the book, but the book says a lot of other things that are really good to know about movement itself. And of course, that Greg Cook's work is very related to Mike Boyle's work. So those two reads together make a very good point. And those are three really good books that I like to read, and that I I read them more than once. I mean, I go sometimes and I like how they make sense, and I like how that's like the foundation of everything for me.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I'm smiling because those books were the foundation for my strength and conditioning philosophy, and especially Mike Boyle's work. And now when I hear how enthusiastically you talk about it, I just want to go. Like, unfortunately, all of my books are in Croatia.
Yeah.
But as soon as I go home, like it just ignites the fire within me, and then I'm thinking about reading the book again, because Mike Boyle's book is hell of a read. Like, I think for me, when someone asks me about one book, it always comes to my mind. Like, as you said, so comprehensive, so simple to read. All of the young coaches will understand it so well, because it's everything is explained so well, and then advanced coaches will understand it so well, because they will understand everything what is written in between those rows, and it's such a good read. I mean, I really like it.
And especially if you are a young coach who, let's say you want to work on power, for example, right? And you don't have enough experience to go through Olympic lifting with someone, because you know how to teach it, or you don't know how to, or you might even don't know how to do it, right? So there's options, you know, in the Mike Boyle's philosophy that will take you to power training without the need of doing Olympic lifting, and is very well explained, and is very well. And then you got other authors. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he's not the only one that to read. Like I said, Marvin Stegan, and then you have things from a lot of other guys. Like I like a lot Poliquin, to read Poliquin, Charles Poliquin. I read Albert Mayo's work. I read a lot of other people's work that are more, let's say, classical strength work guys, because there's one thing that I would point that I don't like, when I hear, talking, because I've heard interviews with Mike Boyle and stuff. I don't like to bash or to put down people that like to do, for example, back squats, just because it's not in my philosophy. I'm not saying it's not in mine. I'm just saying that maybe, Mike Boyle, when you hear him talking, he's not too much into back squats or too much into heavy back squats and stuff. I mean, I use them. And it depends on the time of the year. I don't dislike it, but I'm just saying that the base of the work is pretty good from him. And like I said, you have to read a lot of people and read a lot of books to make up your mind about what do you like and what would you do with your athletes, right?
Excellent. I like it. You work with quite many head coaches, so I would like to hear a little bit about what you learn from all of different head coaches, especially when it comes to basketball.
Well, one of the things that I learned is that the main thing is, even in our profession, you have a base of knowledge that you use to work, right? But I think everyone that is involved with persons, with players, with persons in general, needs to have a little of knowledge of psychology. You know what I mean? I've seen bad, I've seen good, I've seen, and it has a lot to do with the way that you interact with your players. For us as strength and conditioning coaches, and for them as head coaches, like the way you treat people is fundamental, and is going to build everything, and it's going to build a bridge where you're going to go over to show them what you know and to implement what you know. If you don't have that bridge, that psychology bridge that you built in order to cross the river, you can't implement what you know. That is basic. So from seeing a lot of different points of views and seeing how you act in towards your players, I think I've seen differences in that, and I think I base the way I treat my players and the way I interact with my players. I base it on that mainly. You can be strict, you can be a very hard guy, but you can get to people in that way, if you give them, you know, and you give and take, you know what I mean? It's a good thing, you know, to be around a lot of people, because you learn what you should do and you learn what you shouldn't do. So that's mainly what I got from all the head coaches that I work with.
Mm-hmm. Similar question, but might be a completely different answer. What have you? And with this question, we can finish the first part. What have you learned from the players that you worked with?
Mm-hmm. Well,
or in general, from the athletes you work with, because of the so many sports you worked in?
For sure. I mean, for sure they show you a lot of things. I mean, for sure you're going to learn from them, especially because they're mirrors of previous coaches that they had. And you're gonna get a lot of things from that if you pay attention to them, and if you have conversations with them, not being just a guy that says, look, we have to do this because I believe this is the right thing and we're gonna do this. So I mean, you can do it, of course. You're the coach, you're the one proposing the job, the work that they do, sorry. But when you talk to them and they tell you, I've done this way before, what do you think about it? If you talk to them about it, you might find yourself learning new things, right? And this is something that I really like to do with my players. This is something that, or maybe when you get a new player, you can talk to that new player, and you're seeing what you want to improve from him, right? And he's telling you about his history of training, and you start to like tie things up to like, why is this and why is that, and then you apply it to your job. You know what I mean? So maybe this guy has not been doing this, so maybe he's liking this right now. So maybe he should have been doing it before, and he wouldn't be liking it right now. So you tie, you know, all the ends of things, and you learn from that. That's mainly what you learn from I think your players.
Yeah, those are definitely some great points. Excellent. Guys, we're gonna take a short break. You also deserve it. Grab your drinks, grab your snacks, and I'll see you soon for the second part. Hello, welcome back to our improvised studio here in Fuenlabrada. I'm with Ruben today, and we are discussing some really nice topics, especially now in the second part, the main part of the interview. We have really interesting topics, and let's continue with something that we have mentioned in the first part. By the books that you read and by the coaches you follow, we can more or less know about your philosophy, but can you explain us a little bit more what are the core values in your coaching philosophy? What is the most important thing when it comes to daily work with the athletes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I mean, I want to do the basics very good. You know what I mean? So I train movements. I train on movements. I base my training on movements. So I go from basic movements, like deloaded basic movements, to adding weight to those movements that are done correctly, and stress the movement enough to make it, you know, to get gains from it. So in order for me to put stress on a movement, it has to be done correctly, right? So first we work on the movement quality, and then we add the difficulty, and we add the weight, and we add the resistance to the movement. So that's one thing that is basic for me. I mean, seeing a guy, you know, working on some resistance training without a correct pattern is something that I don't want to go through. So I make sure like patterns are all correct, all your mobility is correct, all your corrective exercises is in place, and then I stress. Central nervous system. You stress on from the strength point of view, from the power point of view, but the movement has to be done perfectly. So it has to be very functional. You know, that's a basic for me. And then when it comes to working on, for example, like they say, energy systems. Some people like to call it that way, or when you work on conditioning. I mean, I always do it on the court. I don't like. I might do it at sometimes. I might throw in some work outside, but I like the player to be on the court, and if it's possible, with the ball in his hands, and doing basketball specific movements in order to, you can call it small-sided games, or you can call it whatever you want. But I like the player to be on the court, and I like the player to be playing basketball while he's working on, or him or her is working on conditioning. And this is basically like the main parts of the training that I like. I pick some. I like to know, sensations or the feelings of the player during the session and after the session. So I use a lot of ratings of the sessions, and how the player feels that we are working on what he needs. And then I might rebuild some things on the feedback that we give each other at some point. And because you might be doing something that a player is not feeling, and that you think is very correct way to work something, but the player might not be feeling that is something that is doing him any good. So you have to put into a balance. If the player is not feeling that is doing any good, but then you feel that he has to do it, can you do it in some other way? Is it worth it to have the player doing something that he doesn't believe in, or can you propose something that is going to be something that is going to convince him that what he's doing is going to be valuable? I have some points that are basic in my work, but the feedback with the athlete is very important to me.
Excellent. You have worked with youth athletes, and obviously you are now at the pro level. What are the major differences and adjustments in your daily work with youth athletes and pro athletes?
I would say that periodizing is a big difference between youth and professional. When you work with youth, you can periodize a lot more than when you work with professionals. Professionals, professional level might bring a lot of unstable situations that you don't control and that you have to adapt to it, which is really good because it makes you a better professional. So, because being able to adapt to different circumstances, every week or every month or every day even, makes you a better professional. But with youth, you can, in my opinion, this is always like everything I'm saying is my opinion and based on my experience. You can periodize a little more, and you can see, obviously, you can see results in a different way that you can see it in professionals, right? And don't get me wrong. I mean, with my teams, while I was training youth, last year we went through the female, like my girls in the team, like the girls that I was coaching, went through 79 games in the year, and the boys went around 75, 76 games in between the two competitions that they play and tournaments that they play. So it's a very stressed schedule, but the resistance is different, and the adaptability of the athlete is different. And so this is mainly the difference. So if you tell me, as a strength and conditioning coach, I'll get good things out of both, but periodization I think is different. Of course, load management is different too. You know what I mean? Like when you work with youth, you can go over the top sometimes. It won't be a big deal. When you work with professionals, you know that going over the top might cause you a big trouble, right? So load management and how you manage the load is especially because I think that when you work with youth and you put load on them and you expose them to load, you're doing something that is going to benefit them on the long term, right? So when you expose an athlete to a good amount of load, not too high, not too low, of course, you can go over the top a little bit with youth, and I think it would benefit them on the long term because it's protective for them, right? But yeah, with professionals, you have to be a lot more on point when you're periodizing, when you're proposing the work on the weight room, when you're limiting minutes or giving minutes of work to the players. I think that's the main difference. Yeah.
I'm keeping my mouth shut because I agree with everything. You presented so well, so nothing to say. But you have mentioned one thing that I'm really curious about, maybe because lack of the experience, but I think there is more guys who don't have this experience, so they might enjoy the question or the answer even more. Women's basketball. Mm-hmm. You have experience with women's team. I don't have experience with women basketball as a team strength and conditioning coach, so I would like to hear your opinion on the major differences in your work, and of course you can also mention something that is unique, like similarities.
I think that something that is unique is the work. I mean, let's say you don't have to limit women to do anything that men can do, and vice versa, right? You can do a session that is going to be the same for both. It depends on their experience. It depends on a lot of things that are going to be the same for women and for men. But one thing that I think is very important to keep into account, and that's the difference between men and women, is body-wise, the structure is different. So you have to keep that into mind. So as women have usually wider hips, they will tend to collapse sometimes a lot more than men, and the knees collapse a lot more while playing. And you have to watch a lot for ACLs, injuries, and injuries that come with unstable situations, right? So stability and working on proprioceptive environment, stability is a big thing. Working with women, I think you have to put emphasis on that. And of course, the period is a big thing to keep into account. Women have that time of the month where you're going to have to be more careful with some stuff, from the strength point of view, from the load point of view, from the mood point of view, and because mood is going to make them not because of anything else, but because mood might make them more let's say more prone to work that day, or maybe they don't feel that much of working that heavy that day, or maybe they're not going through a good time. So you have to learn to deal with that, and you have to learn to take care of them in a good way. Their maturity at the same age, you're going to have probably a group of women that is more mature than the group of men that you have. Especially talking about youth development, right? So when you work with a group of young women, you're probably going to have a very good experience of implementing everything that you can, because they're so responsible. Like, I'm talking about general. Okay, you always have some cases that in men will come out the top, and in women will go off the top, and they're not like the average, right? But I think with women, everything, since they're more mature, or they tend to be more mature at the same age than men, if we compare the same age, you're gonna have a good group. With men, of course, you're gonna be able to maybe put a little more stress at some points, and they'll take it better. But yeah, those are like the main differences. But the main thing to keep into account is that the work might be a lot that look alike. You know what I mean? So you might be doing a lot of things that are the same, but you just have to keep into account this is my experience. You have to keep into account these little things. And yeah, like when you treat with them is different, because women might go up and down sometimes, up and down the hill, a little more times than men do, and you have to be able to take care of that and guide them in the right direction. And like I said, especially when you're working with youth, be comprehensive and be someone that's there to help, right? That's mainly the main differences for me.
Excellent. I like it because we covered some youth versus pro and men versus women basketball. Let's switch now completely to professional basketball, and I would like to hear a little bit more about load monitoring and the way how you balance the work in the gym, in the weightlifting room, strength work with work on the court. What are your main goals when it comes to load monitoring, the communication with the coach, individualization, you know, the whole philosophy behind load monitoring?
Okay. We use for load monitoring. We use here. We use Catapult. We've been using that for 4 months now. So I've had the experience of not using it and using it, right? So when we wasn't using Catapult at the time, I was taking obviously a lot of communication with the players. And communication involves everything. Involves wellness, involves RPE, involves questionnaires, involves a lot of things. Everything that you can do to learn more of how the session went and whether you have to maybe be careful or be more careful with certain players. We kept track of the minutes, practice minutes, playing minutes, exposure in general. And now that we have Catapult, we do it in a similar way. I mean, we do the things that we were doing before, but we also added more knowledge to it because it brings you a lot of information. Call it Catapult, call it whatever you want. Accelerometry brings a lot of information that is useful. So now we're doing that, and we're taking basically we don't have the antenna set, so we're taking accelerometry only. So we're taking basically pair of loads. We're taking inertial movement actions. And we're seeing how players perform on the court and some things that they might be lacking with this technology, right? So if you're seeing that a guy is not doing enough decelerations, you might have a problem there of maybe he's not able of doing them, right? So maybe you have to put more emphasis on doing that into the weight room. So. But this is mainly helping us to keep track of what everybody's doing. So let's say that we have a player that, I don't know, one of our point guards is doing a lot of high level of decelerations, which it's a very, it's a deal on terms of load. I mean, they load the player a lot. We will manage that load into the weight, translating that into the weight room probably that week. We'll take a little bit of load off the weight room because he's already had it on the court. So, and this is not going to be the same for every player. I mean, it's probably going to be different for every player, right? So we take the data that we have or that comes from the court, we try to take it into the weight room. And so that way we keep both things in balance, because you know that if you go a little bit over the top in the weight room, then you might have trouble. If the player is exposed to the same amount of actions on the court, you might have an imbalance between both, right? So we try to keep that balance on strength work and load from that point of view. I mean, we're using it, I think, accelerometry and LPS or GPS is something that I used before. But right now I get it like the most out of it because it really helps you to know your players. It really helps you to know how they move on the court. It really helps you to know, obviously, the load that they're taking on the court, and the communication with the coach is simple. I mean, we do informs, PDF informs, and we just pass those to the coach, and I just chat and sit with him about how, like, what went down, if the goal of the practice that he wanted to have was met during practice by the intensities that we had, and then we talk about the next days, how we're going to manage the next days from what we got, the data that we got the previous day or the previous week or the previous month. But I think we get more out of it, and this is why the figure of the sports scientist is growing now, because I can tell that if I had someone here, doing only that, we would get a lot more juice out of it than we're getting right now. You know what I mean? Because right now we're using the software that comes with the devices, but you can get the raw data and then put it into Power BI or put it into Tableau or put it into other software that is going to give you a more visual, more profound data that you can view on the brand's software, right? But like I said, in order to do that, you need someone that is helping you, right? And right now we don't have. We have students that are coming to help out a little bit, and this is what we mainly do. Adjust the load that we take on the court, because this is the main thing right now. Obviously, like the work that you do on the court and the load that they have to take on the court is obviously more important right now. So we move that load here and we adapt in the weight room. We adapt to the load that we got into the court, and stress guys only where we feel that is important and where we feel that they need.
One question about the metrics. As you said, the technology is not so important which one it is, but okay, you have Catapult and experience with it. I'm using currently Catapult, so let's talk about the metrics of Catapult. Beside player load that you have mentioned, and you also mentioned decelerations, especially the high intensity ones, what are the main metrics that you follow? Because the system offers quite many of them. You can even make your own metrics, but sometimes you need to make it pretty simple, especially, and this is the direction where my question is going, is which metrics do you use in order to talk to the head coach?
This is before you ended the question, I was already thinking about it. So we come using technologies, and we could be talking about this for hours, right? But using technologies is to me is often based on the culture of the head coach, right? So are you going to listen to me? Is this that I'm telling you is important, or you don't care at all? Because if you don't care at all, I keep it for myself and I'll just tell you what I think is important, but I won't show you anything, right? So since it depends, I just do something that I start really simple and then I start adding up more things if I see interest, right? And I've done it before. Not only here at professional level, but I have accelerometry before, even in youth development. So the metrics that we use right now are the IMAs, the inertial movement actions, the player load, the player load minute. I like it because the player load minute gives you a view of maybe how intense the activity of the player has been every minute that he's been on the court, So basically, like I mentioned, we don't have antennas, so there's some things that I would like to use. Like there's one that I really like to use it, but we can't, which is asymmetry on the, when you run, you create a path. The accelerometry and the antenna-based system, measures and gives you the asymmetry that the player has on the court. And we can use it now, but I would like to use it in the future, because this is something that you can use to know if there's something wrong with your athletes at some point. You see people that is coming from an injury, and you don't want them to be a lot of time on the court having that asymmetry present while he's working, right? So basically what we use now is the player load, of course, player load minute, IMAs, and inside the IMAs there's high, there's medium, and there's low. And this is what I'm going basically to the head coach with, to tell them how practice went, and mainly the relation between player load and player load minute. I think it gives a pretty simple approach to how practice went, right? So my point of view, or how if I was to design a practice, I'll keep the player load minute high, and the total player load not so high, right? So I want an effort that is not too long, but that is very intense in the time that I'm proposing, because in my opinion this is going to bring you to a game scenario, right? I mean, we don't play for 2 hours. I mean, we play for 40 minutes at the most, but it's at the highest intensity that you can, right? So this is what I would like to translate to practice. So a not too long practice with a very high intensity. And I think seeing player load and player load minute and inertial movement actions, you get a pretty good view of that.
Excellent. I like the point, especially when it comes to player load per minute. I see it as a very valuable metric, especially if you cut the session, because you can have a lot of drills like warm up and prep and shooting drills that you should completely leave out because it can mess completely with the player load per minute. But when it comes to real drills that will improve your game, as you said, small-sided games, call it however you want. I usually call it like competitive games because 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 3-on-2, 4-on-3, 4-on-4, 5-on-4, 5-on-5, whatever. It's all competitive games that we are doing to improve the performance in the game. So whatever we choose, over there we want to track player load per minute, because in some drills you want to keep it higher than in the real game or similar to the real game. Of course you don't want to drop, because then basically you don't have the intensity of what you are preparing for.
Yeah, this is my point. I mean, if you can do, of course, you can do a 2.5-hour practice, but if the intensity of the 2.5-hour practice is going to be divided by the player in his mind in that 2.5 hours, he says, okay, I have to practice for 2.5 hours. So keep it low, because we have to keep on going until 2.5 hours. That intensity is not going to bring you any close to what you're going to do in a game, right? And so that's why I'm saying that my perfect practice would be, not so long. Let's say I'll keep it around, 90 minutes, 80 minutes, but with a very high intensity. And if you use clear sky, which is the lifetime antenna of measuring, we use it sometimes. We have some trouble with it, so we use it sometimes. We are not able to use it some other times. There you can see, like you say, which exercises are the ones that bring you close to game intensity, and which exercises are the ones that are more interesting for you to do with your players. Also, one thing that I wanted to mention is that we measure heart rate, but we came to the conclusion that heart rate and RPE are very close to what the athlete feels and what the athlete is experiencing on the court. So if you take external load and you compare it to heart rate and you compare it to RPE, it's going to be around there. It's going to be pretty close. You have players that are better reporting the intensity of their practice, and you have players that feel it a little different. But it's going to always have some point of relationship, like a high point of relationship between the RPE and the external load, in my experience. So we stopped measuring heart rate right now. We use RPEs and we use the external load, and that is doing pretty good for us right now.
Yeah, that was the initial investigation of my PhD project.
I read it.
Where I started.
I
know. But basically, that's what we were looking for. Are we going to push both sensors on the front and on the back just to have more data, or are we gonna keep it simple, keep the sensors on the back? So we made an investigation, and we came to conclusion that there was like a very, very high correlation. So we stick to simple stuff.
I read it and I started using the heart rates, even though I agreed with what you guys exposed on the study, but I wanted to use the heart rate, see how they went. And you find the heart rate monitor a lot of times thrown away in practice on the sidelines or so you get to the conclusion that guys are not really comfortable wearing this. So if I'm making the player not comfortable while doing practice, maybe it's not worth doing it. You know what I mean? So
you're bringing more stress to the player who is already stressed.
So once I could do and see that the RPE came very close to what the heart rate was saying, we took the heart rate away.
Excellent. Just to keep it simple, especially at the pro level, you have to simplify the things, because that's the players. That's something that players need.
They're the main characters of this movie, and you're just there to help a little bit and to help them And sometimes, you have to have conversation with your players about some of them might not want to wear the devices. So I think it's your job to explain why you would like him to wear it, what it could bring to the table. But the final decision is his to me. If he doesn't want to wear it, I'm going to respect that, and I'm going to go with that. And I'll go with my RPEs, I'll go with my wellness, I'll go with my. But I think we haven't had any cases of that this year.
Also, like, I haven't had any bad experiences with the players from my side.
Mm-hmm.
The only moments when they were a little bit negative about it, let's say it this way, were the moments when they knew that the head coach was not asking for any reports, because by the way how they practice, they could obviously see that there was no individualization. Yeah. But as long as you can keep your coach informed, then they can see that every 1 or 2 days there is some individual intervention. Yeah. Based on the reports that you make and based on the numbers that they have from the practices. Players will probably never complain. Especially, okay, you can keep it always individualized because you are doing a great job by connecting the court with the gym, so you can always bring some individualization in the gym. Yeah. But sometimes for professional players it's not enough, because if they suffer too much on the court, you will never be able to save them just by adjusting in the gym. Because sometimes practices can be in Europe 2.5 hours long, and they can still be super pissed, and nothing will save them here in the gym.
I totally agree. I agree with that, and I think it's our job to grab both parts, head coach, players, and say, look, we're not here to bother anybody. We just want to get information out of the whole process, share it with you guys, because I share the information with my players. I mean, I share the whatever comes out on the data. I share it with them. I have no problem. So they see where they are. They see where they need to improve. They see sometimes if the effort was good, if they could give a better effort, or maybe there's some trouble with. Not sleeping well, or not being into a good situation at home or something. And I think that information is always good for everybody. So if you can convince people to share it and to be involved in the process, you won a lot with that.
Excellent. I like the point. Last question in the second part. It's related to testing. Mm-hmm. What does it mean for you? How often do you do some kind of testing? And what is your practical approach with it?
Well, we do 2 types of testing. So we do the kind of biomechanical or movement testing, and then we do performance testing, right? Definitely I would like to test a lot more than I can, but we do test. At the beginning of the season, we like to use like the physio team uses the Spartanova, which is evidence-based testing protocol, where you get like I said, evidence-based tests, and you go through them with the athletes, and then we share the information, and that way we know movement-wise where the improvements need to be done, and we do corrective exercises with, let's say you had ACL, torn ACL, and you're lacking mobility or you're lacking whatever. We will find out, and we will try to fix that with those tests. And then we have performance-wise, we have different tests. We have jump tests, we have speed tests, we have power tests. So I use them, but like I say, I would like to use them more, because the more times that you use them, the more information, or the more reliable information that you can get out of them, right? But especially like jumping is something that I like to test. As often as I can, because it tells you a lot about the how your athlete is at the time. I mean, are you lacking power right now, or you're not getting fast enough up? We have to find out why is that, and we have to, is it fatigue? Do we need to put a little more power work, a little more strength work? But jumping is something that I do really use, not on a daily basis, but we do use it. And of course, anthropometry is very useful for me. weight-wise, if you have a player losing weight, you might have a problem there. We've had players that, I don't know, are not eating well for whatever reason and they gain weight, or players that are stressed for situations that they have at home and they lose weight. So if they don't tell you, but you keep that in track, you might find out if you go talk to them. I mean, if you see a dramatical weight drop on some player, even though you can tell when you see them because you've been around athletes so much time that when you look at a player, you can tell that he lost weight and you can tell he's not looking pretty good, but you keep track with it. And if you see a weight drop and you talk to the player, you might find something out that you probably felt that it was there. So anthropometry is something that we use. Jumping, and we test also on from the force velocity standpoint. We use accelerometry to test it, and also to keep track of workouts. So whenever I don't want to put a lot of stress on players or one player because he was too stressed on the court or he played too many minutes or whatever, we use an accelerometer to track a good force velocity, keep fatigue away from those, you name it, 0.8 to 1 meter per second. We track it and we try to keep the athlete right there in between those numbers. And that's basically what we test and what we measure. Yeah.
Okay, a little question, very short, regarding the jumping protocol. If when you have the chance to do jumping tests during the season to monitor certain player or the whole team, how would the protocol look like?
Protocol would look like a little warm-up, just a little warm-up, and then we'll go for the jumps. If we want to measure fatigue.
How many jumps?
Three jumps. We go 3 jumps. If we want to measure
3 separated jumps or 3 consecutive?
No. 3 separated jumps. Okay. And then I take the best of them and I keep that. And then if we're testing for power, we do a little bit more warm up and then we go, because it's different goal, so you have to approach it differently, right? So this is basically what we do. Sometimes I'm looking for fatigue, sometimes I'm looking for how the athlete is doing power wise and how he uses his strength, how he uses his power to get off the ground. So right there we use a different protocol and we warm up a little bit more, obviously, to let the athlete explode through the jump and see really the numbers that you want to see that relate to power, right?
Excellent. I have to stop making schedules for these interviews in the afternoons before the game, because we have to go. And I feel like we can talk and cut this interview in 3-4 parts. But today it's again.
Maybe I talk too much.
No. I mean, for me it's perfect. Like, it doesn't matter if you talk too much. It's the value that you bring on the table. Yeah. So for me it's great. The last interview what I had was also on the game day, because sometimes because of your things that you have to do, or my arrival to the place where we play or at home, it's impossible to do it one day before the game. After the game, it's impossible. Impossible. Like, for example, in case of today,
you probably have to go.
We go right after the game. So unfortunately, we have to finish the second part, the main part of the interview. Short break, and we are coming to close it up.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, boys and girls, so we are back to finish this interview with Ruben. First question that I would really like to ask you is about the protocol, or like just the scenario that you go through when the practice ends, or if coach tells you to do something at the end of the practice as a part of already like cool down and recovery. What are the main things that you do in those last minutes of the practice and 20-30 minutes after the practice?
We basically, I mean, if coaches practice in with a 5-on-5, let's say, I take the guys later and we do some shooting with some light movement. to cool down a little bit and to keep them, going down. Make sure they go down slow and they don't just go running to the locker room, get changed, and leave. But most of them, I have to say that most of them have really good protocols of recovery. A lot of them will actually like to stay to shoot, and if I stay like 8 minutes, 5 minutes with them shooting, they'll stay a little bit more later and follow a shooting protocol, whatever they have with the coaches. And then each and every one of them has a different approach to recovery. We have we have the ice baths, which they use. Some of them like it, some of them don't. It's there for them to use. A lot of them have the compression boots that they use at home. Some of them have the Theraguns that they use. Some of them like to get massage after. I go, walking around, making sure everyone is, or I try to run around and make sure that everyone takes, recoveries as far as, your carbs, your proteins, your creatines, everything. If someone doesn't have, or we have some new player that doesn't know where to get it because he wants to have his own, I go with him, try to buy it, make sure he has it. And this is what we basically do. I mean, I talk to the player and say, what's your recovery protocol usually? But if he tells me that he doesn't have any, I try to implement one. And if he tells me that he has one, and I like to change something, I'll tell him, and we'll go with that. But I think I'm pretty lucky about recovering this group because you see all of them doing different things, and all of them ask me to go through stretching, or they go with the physios for the massage, or they ask me I don't know what temperature has the water has to be to add more ice or less ice. So I think we got a pretty good protocol, but I just want to make sure that we're going gradually down. So if we end up with a high intensity exercise, we go to a lower intensity exercise before they leave. And after that, just making sure that they eat well and that they have their recovery protocols, you call it, you name it, Theraguns, compression boots, ice, whatever you want. But just, I propose them to do at least one thing. You know what I mean? So if you want to do your compression boots, just do that. If you want to do two, it's all right, but at least do one. That's basically what we do. So the whole process after like practice will go at about 30 minutes. About 30 minutes between stretching, ice baths, eating something, about 20 to 30 minutes, yeah.
Excellent. Completely different question. If someone puts good money on the table and says, Ruben, I need you to build me a good facility for a basketball team. How would you build that facility? It cannot be enormous. Let's talk about the size of half of basketball court or like full basketball court of different stuff. How would it look like?
I'd definitely like to, there's some things that I will have to have. I will have to have a wall because I'm big on throwing things to the wall. So I definitely look to having a firm wall to throw things to. I definitely look to have, maybe some space to push things around, right? I definitely have some space. I have a lot of free weight in different weights. Kettlebells, dumbbells, barbells, safety bars, hex bars, you can name it. And if I had to leave something out, say I don't have space, I'll probably leave, the machines and all of those out, and I'll keep the small things that are, that can give you a lot, occupying just a little space, right? And then I have another. I've been using it for not too long now, but I think I like them a lot. I have a eccentric overload side or part on one side. I wouldn't base my workout on those, but I think they're pretty good to be implemented at some points of the season. Like for example, we have windows now, national teams. We had the Spanish Cup, so that's a good time to implement some eccentric overload and use it, and add some protective stimulus to your athletes. So that's a good thing. So that's the things that I will have to have for sure. And then after, a lot of bands, a lot of fit balls, a lot of all of that. But that's what basically have to do.
Excellent. I like it. What was when it comes to your coaching career, what was the hardest decision that you made?
I don't know if this, the hardest decision I had to make is to be a full-time strength and conditioning coach. Because I used to play before, and I was so comfortable that way. I had my money from playing, I had my money from training my athletes. And the time that I had to decide that you have to focus on this already, because you can't keep on. I love to play. I mean, when I stopped playing, it was something hard for me because I love to play. But it was time to offer full time to strength and conditioning and stuff. So that was probably a good friend of mine from Serbia offered me the possibility of going full time on it and getting good money for it. And so I just had to make the decision of, I'm done playing and I'm going to do this. And I couldn't be thankful enough to him, because that was a really good decision, and it has paid off a lot. I mean, I'm very thankful for him and for the opportunity that he gave me. And I remember talking to my wife saying, but that is far from home. I mean, where I had to go to work was, it was probably like a 45 car, ride, 45 to go, 45 to go back. So it's an hour and a half between both every day. But it was way worth it. I mean, I got a lot of out of that relationship with him, out of that job. So I'm pretty happy for the decision that I made. It was hard to make at the time, because when you love something, it's hard to let it go. But since I didn't let it go, because I've been involved with it while I was not playing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty happy for the decision that I took. So I left. I substituted playing for my PhD in the full time of strength and conditioning coaching. So I was pretty happy for it.
Nice. When it comes to relationships with head coaches, it's definitely not always the nice situations and always environment where we can enjoy, because it's very stressful, and head coaches are usually the most stressful guys on the team, because they have the highest level of responsibility. Definitely during your career you had some hard moments. I'm not going to say bad moments, because from hard moments you can also learn, and then later on you appreciate them sometimes even more than only the good moments. But I would like to hear about one example of the hard moment with the head coach, and what is even more important behind this question is to tell us how you managed it.
I think that I'm lucky enough to haven't have any very, very hard moment with anyone. I mean, I think I like to get into the other person's perspective a lot. So since I do that, it's hard to have a huge problem with someone, right? Because when you look at things from his point of view, you see that, okay, he might be seeing it this way, so I think you shouldn't be keeping it into account, and I think I haven't had a huge problem, but I think I've had situations where I think that I could have done more if I was, because coaches are the bosses, right? They're the boss, and you have to go with it, and you have to respect it, and you work for him, right? Or her. You work for him. So you have to always keep that into mind. But situation that bothers me a lot is when my job, where I feel that my job is not being useful enough, right? Because I can do many things that are being kept into mind to improve, right? So I'm doing things, I'm trying to do things, I'm trying to improve things, but things are not going my way, or what I'm doing is not impacting a lot because it's not being used a lot, right? But I don't know. I guess you learn to keep on doing your job, to do whatever you can in whatever is in your hand to help your players, because while helping your players, you're going to be helping the head coach, you're going to be helping the team, and there's a lot of things that you can do that are not influenced by anyone, like what we said, recovery. Recovery is something that is not going to be influenced by any head coach, because recovery, they don't care much about it. I mean, it's not bothering their time of practice. It's not bothering anything that they have to do. You manage it, and you make a huge impact managing recovery, right? So I think when you're not kept a lot into account on the everyday work, I think there's still things that you can do to improve your players and to make them, and to make them better. So that's mainly what bothered me the most at some points. Maybe not be kept into account, or my job wasn't being kept into account. But you have to find other ways to contribute when that is happening. I guess that's the learning.
I like the point. Last question for today.
Yeah.
How do you define success?
I think that's a good question. I think that I would define success of 2 points, and this is going to be dramatical, but this is how I see it. So you're born and you die, right? You go from point A to point B. So I think that if you're able to be better at what you do, better than last day, better than past day, better than the past month, better than the past year, and you can keep improving not only professionally, but as a father, in my case, as a husband, if you can be better and you can learn from the things that you did wrong, to not do them or do them as less as possible, and you improve as a person, as a professional, like we said, I think that would be a pretty close to success to me. I mean, success to me is not I don't know, just let's say reaching the NBA or as a player or doing. I think success is take what you have and make the best out of it and be better at it as time goes by. So that way you'll be better when you die than when you were born. That's success.
If I can rephrase it a little bit for you, success is a mindset of the constant growth.
Definitely.
In any part
situation.
of your life.
Because if you take it as constant growth in all of the areas that you live, like I said, husband, father, son, professional, you'll probably be better at the other ones. You know what I mean? I think that if you try to be a better father, and if you try to be a better husband, and if you try to be a better son, you'll probably be a better professional.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's my point of view.
Excellent, excellent. I really like it. Guys, I hope that you enjoyed this episode with Ruben. Unfortunately, we have to go because we play game against each other. Yeah. So I hope it's going to be.
Now.
Yeah,
we can talk now.
We stop now. I'm really looking forward to see how the game is going to be played. And don't forget to share this episode if you liked it. Soon we are coming with a new interview, and bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening.